A nefarious nightmare contains themes that may be explicit or triggering for some. Specific warnings and disclaimers will be mentioned in the show notes. A nefarious nightmare assumes all parties that are mentioned in these cases to be innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Listener discretion is strongly advised. You can help us grow the show by leaving us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or you can join our Patreon for lighthearted bonus content. With this, welcome to Season 5.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Martin Luther King Jr. And today in science class, I learned every cell in our entire body is replaced every 7 years. How lovely it is to know one day I will have a body you will never have touched. LM.
On today's episode, we will be opening up with Phase 3 by speaking with Kim. While that is not her real name, she was sexually assaulted twice by her stepfather. While her stepfather is no longer on the Earth realm, the things that he did to her, as well as her closest family members, will forever haunt her. Kim finally spoke up about it, which is important because we feel like this is a very important step for her to take in order for her healing to start. Please be advised that this episode does go into graphic detail and will be triggering and very emotional. This might be hard to listen to, but it's important for her to get her story out there so that others, like herself, will feel less alone. With that, I'm Amanda Cronin.
And I'm Courtney Fenner. And A Nefarious Nightmare presents Still Minding the Beehive, Surviving Sex Crimes, Part 9.
Before we start, we have some housekeeping. Officially, as Courtney said in Mama D's episode, this would be episode 100. If you missed that entire conversation, basically, some podcast players will show episode 100 and others will show episode 101. Regardless, we have been doing this for 2 years now and have finally reached episode 100. So that's such a huge milestone, and we really just wanted to put that out there. The next thing we want to say is that as of the release of this episode, 10 days from now, we will be attending the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival. Time is running out, so please join us. Click on the link in the show notes or go to truecrimepodcastfestival.com, head over to tickets, and you can get a discount by using the code BEES. That's BEES. And finally, we've gotten so many great and wonderful reviews from so many people on Apple Podcasts. So we wanted to thank you all. It means, honestly, a great deal to us to see that we are doing something right and reaching people in ways that we only imagine we would. So thank you so much for listening to everybody's stories and understanding how to be empathetic to them. I can tell you for sure that each and every review that you have left us has made everyone feel way more validated, seen, and understood. So thank you. Now, to get into the episode.
Just a reminder, this episode opens up Phase 3 of this series. In Phase 3, we'll be talking to various survivors of sex crimes, some of which were additional survivors from Adrianville, Dusea. On today's case, we'll be speaking with Kim, who was raped twice by her stepfather and endured coercive control by him for over a decade. Some of you might ask at one point if it's considered incest if you have intercourse with a step-family member or have been assaulted by one. Legally, it's not considered incest, but it's also up to the individual. Now, just to be clear, incest is defined as sexual relations between people classed as being too closely related to marry each other, and also the crime of having sexual intercourse with a parent, child, sibling, or grandchild. While today's case refers to the sexual assault from one family member against a step-family member, this is a father-daughter relationship in which the father attempted to fill a void left by the victim's actual father, and it teeters on the line of incest. In this case, incest or not, What happened to Kim was sexual assault.
In fact, not just sexual assault. We've known Kim for a good while, and we can say that she has been the target for many bad things to occur. This is why Kim and her sister can relate to Alyssa and Sarah Turney. Fortunately for Kim, it never escalated to murder or missing. But what did happen is that Kim's stepfather did have an obsession with her. Her stepfather would show up randomly at both girls' places of employment, giving off grandiose and narcissistic behaviors, kept photos of Kim that she did not want people to see, enabled her alcoholism and other bad habits, love-bombed her by buying her things only to twist it on her later, to make her feel obligated to do what he wanted, and eventually sexually assaulted her twice while she was under the influence and could not consent.
He would also contact both girls continuously as if he were playing some sort of power role. For instance, he'd text them and contact them over and over, almost like a stalker, until someone would answer, and once someone did, he'd give the silent treatment, which, by the way, is a major method of manipulation used by narcissists. He'd also tell the entire family about any transgressions on the girls' parts, amplifying any negative stigmas surrounding them just to prove a point or make them learn a lesson or to even embarrass or humiliate them, which is another tactic used by narcissists. Kim's sister, who wishes not to take place in this episode at this time, would say that when she first met him, she would wake up to this strange man drunkenly kissing her arms and feet. While she had the courage to remove herself and place a firm boundary by saying no, she was still under his spell, recalling times where she'd ride with him at work or sit as close to the window in the car away from him to avoid being touched or grabbed by him. When Kim's sister got married, she recalled him refusing to attend her wedding unless he was the one to walk her down the aisle. His endgame was to be seen as the patriarch and was willing to ruin a wedding if he was not seen as such, which is another tactic used by narcissists. Now, evidently, this was a wedding that he played no actual role in helping pay for or anything like that. He just wanted to reap the benefit of the person in charge. He had a grandiose idea of himself, which was over-exaggerated, and he wanted everybody to recognize who he was and what his place was and what everybody else's place was. Now, little did Kim's sister know, he had sexually assaulted Kim twice, just months before her wedding.
When Kim's sister first met him, she saw the red flags a mile away, but to this day says she felt bad that she did not stop things from escalating between he and Kim, and felt bad that she fell for his lies and sinister methods of manipulation and slander against Kim. She also recognized that it took literal rape for her to finally put her foot down and say enough is enough. And while we certainly can't blame her, after all, the entire family was manipulated, we understand why she feels bad. She was being controlled like her sister, but in some slightly different ways. And while Kim was the target, her closest family members were his flying monkeys.
The following is a dramatization of a reenactment between Kim and her stepfather, which only serves to show you exactly how a conversation between the two would take place. Now, we advise you to please listen with care, as this does get deeply uncomfortable.
Great. Hello?
Hey there, baby doll. How's life treating you?
It's fine, I guess. What does he want now?
So, are you ready for our weekly visit at Starbucks?
I'm not feeling that great today, to be honest. I'm probably gonna hang back.
Oh, I see. I'm willing to buy you some clothes from Nordstrom Rack and a new phone and pay for your Starbucks. And you want to leave me hanging like your sister and everyone else does? Yeah, that's fine. Completely fine. I understand.
He always does this. He always makes me feel so bad.
Look, I'm sorry. It's nothing personal.
Except that every time you do this, you always place yourself in my personal space, or corner me, or always want to talk to me in private.
I'm just literally not feeling great. My stomach is queasy.
Did you drink too much last night?
Actually, no,
Did you act like a little skank again? Are you dancing again? Don't forget, I have all your pictures in my phone and all of the Polaroids that I can show your sister, your brother, your aunts, everyone, your mom. What would your mom say? You little whore.
Please don't do this. Please don't do this. These things aren't me. Please.
Remember that night I saved you? You were drunk and you tried to jump off that building.
What do you mean tried? I wanted to jump. I found a bottle of vodka and got so sick of everyone making me out to be something that I'm not.
Oh, but you are. You're a whore. You walk the walk.
You raped me. You have ruined my life.
You and I both know what happened those nights. I was intoxicated. You saw an opportunity. You took advantage.
Me? What about my feelings? We have something special. You invited me over, and you had your way with me. Your body wanted it.
My heart didn't, you fucking narcissist.
I was drunk. I was suicidal, and you took advantage of me.
You were asking for it, and it was so good. Look at the way you act, the way you talk. I'm a real man, and I know how to read body language. I know women want me. I know every woman I cross paths with wants me. How could they not? You couldn't resist me.
I'm going to throw up. I feel so sick and ashamed.
Let me just say, you already don't have your kids, and there's a reason for that, babe. You did this all to yourself. And if you even for 1 second think anyone is going to believe you about all those nights, let's just say I have a lot of evidence that says otherwise.
I'm really feeling sick now. Can't believe I allowed him to do whatever it was he did to me. I was drunk. I feel so stupid and guilty, even though I feel deep down that I've done nothing wrong. How could I allow myself to let any of this happen?
All of this because I don't want to go to Starbucks, because I'm not feeling well.
Oh, I think we'll be seeing each other at Starbucks, as planned. And next time, don't you dare embarrass me again. Remember when people asked if we were husband and wife, and you looked all disgusted, saying, "Oh, that's my stepdad." Do you know how embarrassing that could have been?
So you're upset with me for clarifying a truth?
Of course he is. He wants people to think we're a couple.
You know, I have to go. I'll see you later, I guess.
Uh-huh. And maybe you'll apologize to me for your tone.
And the way you talk to me after everything I do for you.
After everything you do to me, you mean?
We allowed Kim to listen to this reenactment prior to her episode, and what she had to say was heartbreaking. Kim was in full-blown tears. She said that it dredged up some memories and that it was very traumatizing. We almost did not include this reenactment, but she insisted that we do, because even with all of that, she said that she wants people to really understand, and said that this reenactment painted a very clear picture of what happened to her. The following is our interview with Kim. Once again, please listen with care.
My name is Kim, and I was born and raised in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, born in Plano, and I currently live in New Mexico. I like artwork. I am a Christian. At best, you know, I'm funny and bubbly, and I consider myself relatively smart. You know, I have my own demons and issues and things, but I work on them and I'm doing the best that I can. So I have 2 children. I have a 16-year-old daughter and also an 8-year-old daughter. They do not currently reside with me. However, I keep in communication with them as much as I can. As far as the particular crime that I'm going to be discussing today, this was a very close family member, and he was involved in my family for a good while. You know, it started in 2006 when he was introduced into the family, and it's kind of complicated how it started. I was significantly younger and didn't really know everything and was pretty naive, even though I thought I knew everything. It started out, me and this person had a pretty combative relationship. We butt heads a lot. I feel like when you're at a certain age, you're not quite an adult, but you're not quite a child, but you have independence. You should be given the space and the love to make the mistakes in your life, and not have an active person. This person's role in my family, he really kind of had no business being so involved in my personal affairs, especially provided that I wasn't living under his roof. I had my own apartment, I just wasn't, it started out there. He got it to where my family alienated me, and it was because the reason being is anytime I would want to talk to my family, I would have to go through him. And it got to the point where it got so frustrating and stressful that I just quit calling. And in that time, he went ahead and told everyone in my family, terrible things about me. And, that was the alienation aspect of it. He was trying to divide and conquer, until finally one day I decided, I'm going to contact my family without him and let them know that, I don't want any involvement with him whatsoever. This whole crime was a mixture of sexual assault and sextortion. The actual assault itself only happened twice. It was a consecutive assault, but there were events leading up to it that were definitely red flags. The sextortion part was when I was moving. He had somehow gotten a hold of some pictures of mine, some intimate pictures of mine. They were Polaroids at the time, and I guess he had never gotten rid of them. And it was also some other intimate photos from someone I was trying to work things out with someone at the time. And I sent intimate photos to this person, and he somehow got access of those. And it's anybody's guess whether or not he actually deleted these. I would say that this could very well possibly be a mixture of sextortion and revenge porn. There was always that looming threat that these images would get exposed. So it made for a very uncomfortable family situation. I would definitely say that gaslighting and love bombing was a very active ingredient in the duration of the relationship. So before the actual event actually occurred, he had attained my trust very systemically, very methodically. It took several years for me to actually trust this person. I knew that he wasn't trustworthy in the beginning. It took him a long time for him to gain my full trust. And once he did, and I was in a very vulnerable situation, that's when he went ahead and acted on his impulses. What made my bells and whistles go off initially was his obsession with my whereabouts, my personal life, and who I was dating. He never liked anybody I dated, no matter how great of a person they were. So that was kind of a dead giveaway. Yeah, it's a dog. I told you there was dogs. But that was kind of a dead giveaway, and I tried to confront my family about things, and a handful took me seriously, but unfortunately the other people in my family had been so manipulated by this person that they either thought I was making things up for attention, or I just didn't really like this person or whatever, but I wasn't a shrinking violet about it. I definitely tried to let people know. So as far as him having my family it just seemed to me like they were under some kind of spell because of his reputation. He was in the Navy, he was a medic, he used to be a chef. Because of all these things, it would be easy for them to think there's no possible way that this person, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but I definitely feel like they were gaslit. The love bomb, yeah, I know that there was love bombing to them, to my family. So I would definitely think that they fell victim of that themselves. So this person completely exhibited stalker-like behavior. There was one occasion where I didn't even have a phone. I was working in a mall, and things weren't going so great in my personal life, but I wasn't trying to contact this person, and there's no way this person could have contacted me, but just somehow out of the blue on my birthday, he didn't know where I worked or anything, but he just showed up. He showed up with a watch and some perfume for my birthday. And that just reeks of stalker right there. I didn't invite him there, and I purposely didn't want him to know my whereabouts or place of work or anything. I'm not revealing the name of I don't even want to say attacker, or perpetrator, or whatever those ugly words are. It doesn't matter, because he's deceased. And I still pray peace for him and his family. I forgive him, for everything. But it's just, there are people out there that are like that they don't care how long it takes. They'll do what they can to get your trust and then just sweep the rug out from underneath you. I feel like had it not been for this person, what might have been like a phase for anybody else, like a drinking phase or a pill phase, it might have been like, a phase for anybody else. I feel like it has become like it's had such an avalanche effect on my life. Like I have lifelong problems, whenever he did pass, and he apologized. I accept it, of course, and I appreciate it, but we're talking about 20 years of manipulation. It started when I was 18 and it ended when he deceased. I definitely have my suspicions that this could have been done to somebody else by the same person. It's really hard to say. The person he was supposed to be in a relationship with also got totally manipulated by him. And I think that's what breaks my heart the most, was because this was a very close family member of mine. And it just added gasoline to the fire that was going on. And it was like carrying a bowling ball inside of me for 24 hours a day. And the more I had to be around him, the more strained things became, because not only did he totally dismiss the assault, because the actual assault was in 2017. But not only did he dismiss it like it had never happened, but when I was helping this family member out, this other family member, and I would be doing a chore or being in the kitchen, it was like he would come and get in my personal space and kind of antagonize me, kind of like flirt with me, poking my ribs. And I told him, I said, please, I need my personal space, and it's like he purposely did that. So I feel like it wasn't just me that was a victim. I feel like the other person was definitely a victim, because she was hurt by this person a lot. He lied to her a lot. It was just really, it was hard to watch. It was hard to be involved in, and it was hard to watch. Through this 20-year situation, for lack of a better word, I had been an entertainer, or what we call like an exotic dancer, here and there, sometimes to take care of my daughters. When I was 18, it was really just to get my stuff together. I wanted to go back to school. And this person like just totally made me feel like I was doing just straight up prostitution. It's like, look, you don't understand. I get on a pole, I take off my clothes, I make money, and I go home. He used it as a utensil to make me seem illegitimate, especially to a certain close family member, like just making it seem like I had no credibility, no trust. And it's like, if I were such a liar, then why did I come right out and tell them that that's what I was doing when it happened, if I'm just so illegitimate. But that had a lot to do, like, it alienated me. It made me not want to come to my family about anything. And I think that that's where he came in and just painted a certain picture of me, because he not only did that, but my anxiety was so bad because of that. That's why I still suffer today from, like, I get scared to call you. I get scared to call the people I love the most, because I feel like I'm just going to get, condemnation whenever, but I've gotten a lot better at it. But I used to be petrified of talking to my family because of what was going on. And I still suffer from that. And, but I mean, I don't care what the reason is, but it shouldn't be a factor, and there should be more protections for people like that. There's young ladies who go into prostitution because they just have no other where to go. They don't know what to do, and they go in at very young ages, and the only family they have is their pimp. And when their pimp beats the crap out of them and they go to jail, the cops, are not only not going to do anything typically to the quote unquote customers, but they're going to slap that prostitute with all the charges. So that's just going to alienate her even more from getting help and making turnarounds in her life, So it's just the whole lead. So I'm trying to help out that other aspect of their true crime, because I've heard about that. It's really heartbreaking and really sad. And there's a lot of human trafficking that goes on in clubs. And that's a really scary thing. I actually met a couple of girls that were, and you could tell that they were. There was girls from Germany, girls from the Ukraine, and it just, something wasn't right with that picture, so it was just really hard. And then, I've watched documentaries because I used to work in those types of places, and that's where I learned about, there's a lot of horrible things that go on in the dark underbelly of those places, because it's getting worse. That, I'll do anything before I go back to that life, Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and tackle the actual incident that happened. I want to say it was June of 2017. I had gone back to a life of dancing because I didn't really have anywhere to go, and I became extremely depressed. And at this point, this person he'd attained my full trust. And it was an evening, and I was very depressed. I had a big giant bottle of gin that I was drinking, and I was seriously contemplating jumping off of the top of the Motel 6 I was staying at. That's something I would never act upon, but at the same time, it was a pretty serious consideration. I felt like I had ruined my whole life, and it was getting nowhere. And those types of places aren't what they used to be, in a sense that it used to be you could dance and make money, but more and more places had turned into places like brothels, basically. So that was very hard for me to make the kind of money I needed to pay child support and to even barely survive, because the motels were eating up every penny I had, and it was very depressing, and I didn't know what to do. So this person had attained my trust, and I called him to come over, just for comfort, just to talk and to keep me from doing something stupid, At that point, there gets to a point where you can drink enough to where it takes more to make you actually drunk, and you don't actually black out. You can be drunk, but you can still remember everything that was happening. So he came over and proceeded to sit next to me on the bed, and things were getting flirty. And I really don't want to go into the full extent of what happened. It makes me very uncomfortable. But let's just say a form of sex had been had. And the second it happened, I made him get up and, I kind of yelled at him just to leave. I was very angry and he left. And me, I'm starting to think, back then, maybe it's because he's on so many opiates and he doesn't really know what he's doing. I will give him a chance to come back and we can make peace with it and have a forgiving, and that it, like he knew it was wrong. But, instead of that happening, another sexual assault was had. So inviting him over again because I felt terrible about it, and you would assume that the other person would too. And, I wanted to give him a chance to apologize and make peace with it. And, tell him that, it's sickening, the whole thing's really sickening. But instead of him doing that, another assault was had. And I told him, I said, I never want to talk to you again. The only reason I would is because, you are in the family and it's going to be unavoidable. But, I can forgive it, but it's just like, I don't trust you. And I said, you have confirmed everything for the past however long, since 2006, my gut feelings, all of them, you have confirmed, and time went on and I did not talk to him. But it was a monkey that I had carried on my back. And there was a point where I found myself further down the line in the future where I had to help a family member. So I was constantly at her house helping, and he was there. So at that point, I realized me not whistleblowing made him feel like he got off scot-free. Because what would happen is when the other person was working or when she wasn't around, I would be cleaning the kitchen or doing something, and he would get in my personal space, and he'd start, just poking and kind of, I guess like he was kind of like flirting, but it kind of felt like I was being picked on. It was like he was taking advantage of the fact that we both had this very ugly secret, and he knew because it would break the other person's heart, but it finally got to the point where I had to tell the other person, I'm like, look, you need to tell this man that he needs to stay out of my personal space. I'm here to help. I'm not here to, I'm not here for him at all. I'm here for you. And, she confronted him, but it persisted, it persisted. He didn't respect my personal space. It made it to where I just being around him made me sick all the time. And I, I went back to drinking again, because that's, that's how I deal with situations of very high stress, because I can't function well. I had to drink just to get chores done, just to get things done, just so I wasn't thinking about this monkey on my back, and it got to the point, I'm not really sure what finally put the straw on the camel's back, but I confronted my family member and I told her, hey, there's something I need to tell you. I need to tell you about something that happened. And I told her, and I don't think it's that she couldn't believe me. I think it's that she didn't want to believe me. And then about 2 nights after that, an altercation was had. He did something that upset me to the point where, I got vocal, and I told him, I said, if you don't tell her, I'm going to tell her myself. I said, you need to tell her what happened. And so that very night he sat down on the couch next to her and I said, tell her. And he told her. He fessed up to it. And I feel really bad for that family member because it's not something you want to hear of your significant other, you know? That's not something you really ever want to deal with, you know, and it complicated the family dynamic in a pretty heavy way. I already didn't want this person around my kids. And that was another thing. He had quite the obsession with, you know, my older daughter. And I never really thought it was healthy, you know? I mean, but it was worrisome. And I wasn't the only one who felt it to be kind of inappropriate. But that's what happened. You know, I still blame myself, but that's like, I mean, I question everything, you know, I question all of it, but that's something that I have to work on because I was the one that was kind of inebriated and, you know, he wasn't, you know, he was the one who was in control. I don't know why. I hate thinking of it as a rape. But it's definitely not what I was expecting those 2 evenings, nor was I wanting. I very much believe that he saw his chance when he knew that I was inebriated. It makes me question everything, you know. Like I really it just really messed a lot of things up. And I just feel like more and more people are developing those types of narcissistic qualities. And it seems to be more of a plague. People you would never suspect. Like, you know, I've seen someone who I cared about a great deal, you know, turn to certain drugs and he turns into a completely different person. And it's just, I don't know. It's like I see more and more of it happening. And that's when I really have to be careful, you know, and I try to be as aware as I can of what's my fault and what's not my fault. You know, it's really frustrating. Just real quick, going back to red flags. Before this happened, it was about a year before, he had taken me to Starbucks, which, you know, he liked to do every now and then. Whenever he would take me places and I would call him my stepfather, he would get offended. But there's this one incident where we were in Starbucks and he was looking through his phone for something and it was just photo after photo after photo of my face. And I was like, you know, I kind of brushed it off at the time, but it's like stuff like that's not normal. And he didn't do stuff that the type of role that he had in my life, my dad wouldn't do stuff like, you know, and it was just things that, I mean, it's hard to really get into it without making certain things obvious, but he didn't behave in a manner of which a normal father would behave, you know. And Mom said that he always wanted to have a little girl. And the more I think about it, the more I believe it's by the grace of God that he never did, you know, because God only knows what that poor little girl would have gone through, you know. So for that, I'm grateful. You know, I'm grateful that it wasn't me and not an actual child or, you know. Prior to the events that transpired, I did have anxiety and depression. But I checked myself into a rehab in 2020, right around COVID, and that's when I was medically diagnosed with PTSD. I don't know how things like that affect people. I think my brain is doing what, I mean, I feel like it blocks out the specific event, but it definitely manifests in other ways to where I now, like, my anxiety and depression, it plagues me. I have such a hard time. When I go to sleep, I get woken up easily and I can't go back to sleep for several hours later. There's not much balance in my life. I try really hard to attain and maintain balance. It's just kind of gotten me on a path that I'm fighting a lot harder now than I was before all of this happened. I'm working on my sobriety, but for some reason it's a lot more difficult. I've sought counseling. The best thing I can do now, since I can't really afford counseling, is, I tried to go to church and cultivate a church family. A lot of them don't know about what happened. I don't really have anyone I can talk to about it. I've told certain people about it, but it doesn't really seem to help or make a difference. And when you tell people about things like that, they don't always take it into consideration whenever depression and anxiety manifests itself very physically. For instance, you can be so depressed and anxious that you either don't see the point of getting out of bed, or you're just too afraid to get out of bed to face the world. So it's like a snake eating its own tail, It's made it really difficult to handle stress at certain jobs, which is why I thank God for the job that I have now, because even though it's a lot of physical manual labor, I primarily work by myself and I tend to gardens. And if I need like a mental health day, my boss is very understanding. Friday, I did get a small heat stroke, and today I was supposed to go into work, but my boss called the client and was like, she needs to get some rest. So I'm very blessed that I feel like the Lord is sending angels down when I'm away from home to make sure that I'm okay. It makes relationships hard, because like, I know I'm not healthy enough mentally to really be in one. But for some reason, it's like they find me, and I have to tell, people like, hey, I'm in no position to date. Like I have demons that really really I need to get them out. I have trust issues. I have very serious trust issues. There's times that I feel like I'm under constant surveillance, and like I don't ever feel like I can be comfortable in my own skin. And it might sound crazy to people, but there's times I just feel like I'm being spied upon, so that's how it's affected me. I don't have a lot of friends, and it's not for lack of trying. There's other things going on in my personal life, that are very stressful, and it's just hard because it just seems to be like people you would never expect just kind of stab you in the back sometimes, and it's just like, I don't know why it keeps happening, but it's, in a positive note, it's gotten me to be a lot more self-aware, as far as being very careful in what I do and say, because I don't want to become my monster. I don't want to become a narcissist. I don't want to be like that at all. So it's just, I think in some ways I do a pretty good job at not thinking about what happened. But the problem with that is there's so many other things that either remind me of him or remind me of the situation, or, just the general anxiety and depression and the overwhelming guilt that has been put on me, like all things that I should not be feeling. And people don't seem to understand that this depression and anxiety, it's not like someone who's in a bad mood and, oh, you give them a lollipop and it's like, oh, you just made my day and now it's all better. The thing about it is it keeps poking at you and prodding at you. And like, even with the peaceful job that I have, like I'm constantly wondering when the next shoe is going to drop, you know, like I'm in constant fear, you know, and it's very difficult. And that's why I would turn to drinking, is because even if just for a few hours, I don't have to feel that fear, but that also creates other problems, obviously. So as far as dealing with matters of PTSD and emotional health, I do have some family members who have been very, very supportive and understanding, because they've been through different forms of what I've gone through. And of course, they're family and they're loving, you know, they love me. But, you know, I've had my fair share of people in my life who just kind of dismiss it or don't really take it seriously, or just blame all my failures on my drinking whenever there would be surrounding circumstances that would just be so stressful that I couldn't function, you know, and this would be well before a relapse. And people who, you know, I'm sure maybe they would care if they understood, but they didn't understand. And it made a huge, it affected things in a big way, you know, because there would be times that it would get thrown in my face later. And then, of course, it'd be followed by an apology. And then I'd have to remind the person, like, look, I really do struggle with this. This is a very real thing. Like last night I went to bed, I was really tired, but my anxiety woke me right out of my sleep at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I couldn't fall back asleep till about 6 or 7, you know? And I was just plagued with thoughts of depression, anxiety, hopelessness. And it made for a really rough night, you know? And it's hard to function as a normal human being when you can't get into that rhythm, you know. And I have support now, and God bless that. I'm so grateful and humbled, and I have a lot of gratitude for it. But it took some time. I had to weed out a few snakes, but I had been praying and praying and praying, and reading the Bible and just really getting in the Word, which I know not everyone on this show is, you know, Christian, but it worked. I definitely felt like my prayers were answered, because it's true. God will tempt you, but sometimes it's a test, and if you fall, you know, He wants you to get back up and keep trying. And this time I feel like God's actually given me a healthy outlet to focus on healing and sobriety and keeping work and working on myself. And I very much want other victims out there to know that, you know, the suffering is hard, you know, and it can take a while. I don't know why, for some reason, it just seems to kind of have gotten worse, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, you know, and focusing on what I can do instead of what I didn't do in the past. My truth is my truth. And however the cards may fall, you know, you see things with your own 2 eyes, you hear things with your own 2 ears. And if people have maleficent intentions on just dragging your name through the mud, you know, it makes it really hard, especially with the type of anxiety that we have. So that's how it would hurt things, because for people who already have a hard time doing normal things, it just makes it like 10 times harder. So that's how it could be harmful. But for those, you know, who know you for who you really are, and, you know, just see that, then, I mean, it can be helpful. You know, because they can encourage you and tell you like, hey, you got this. You just kind of have to not care. People who sensationalize these things or just watch some Lifetime made for TV movie, just to sip on their wine and shake their head like, oh, and they just they don't realize the damage that it does to the people it's actually happened to. There's nothing glamorous about what happened, nothing. And there's long-term ramifications for it. So it's nothing, I couldn't even fathom seeing something like this or hearing about it and be like, ooh, this is juicy. No, this is not juicy. It is very much a living hell. It's a living hell. And biblically, people have described hell as constant torment. That's precisely what it is. It's constant torment in your mind, and it's no joke. As far as this person being apprehended, to my knowledge, he has not yet. There's been times, there's been so many holes in some of his stories. I know one thing about like narcissists and sociopaths. They typically they either have a lot of friends or they don't have many at all. And I know there's been people in his past that he's made mention of, like the one that got away or whatever, but we don't know her story, and looking back on it, it's like you can definitely see how, they could have severed ties because of his behavior. But as far as law enforcement, I think the only thing that he made mention of was like, it was either a DWI or a public intox, but I don't think it was a crime of like moral turpitude or sex or sexual assault or anything like that. But he was definitely the type who had a lot of respect in society, like because of his reputation, he's the last person that most people would have suspected of something like this. But knowing about his childhood, he was very favored, he was very pampered, and he was very sheltered, and I don't want to give too many details away because then certain people listening be like, oh, we know who that is. But there was a reason for that. They felt a little more sympathy for him growing up. So he got whatever he wanted. And then, the football playing, like everything. And then when he got older, he was so used to getting what he wanted. And it's not the way life is, So I've discussed this with other family members, not many. There's one that you and I are very close to that I discussed this with, and she told me that she wasn't surprised at all. She said in the past she saw red flags. She said, I knew something wasn't right because all he ever does is go around and trash talk you. So even back in the day, she knew that something wasn't right. I really don't like to tell too many other family members about it because I feel like we've all suffered enough, I don't feel the need to, because again, I try to be real delicate about, I don't want to gossip. I don't want to badmouth, I feel like this is important because you're helping other, women and men who are going through this. I've told friends, and sometimes you run into friends who've been into similar, if not worse, situations, and they're the same way. Like, they don't want to talk about it with everybody, but I guess it's a form of trauma bonding whenever you make a friend who's been through something similar. But, I've had to be careful about the friends I make too, because some friends aren't looking to heal from it. They're just looking to medicate, But I've gotten good support, and I've also gotten very apathic support, which is like the opposite of empathic, just very apathic, where it kind of goes in one ear out the other, and they don't realize that something like this happened, and they don't factor it into my quirks and behaviors that normal people don't have. What I would like listeners to know, it may or may not seem relevant, but when something like this is going to happen, and you get your red flags, and you know in your heart of hearts that it's not right, just try to remind yourself that you're not crazy. Like, you have 2 eyes, you have 2 ears, you have your motor functions. You're not crazy. And hopefully, God willing, it's not someone as close in the family that it was with myself. If you can, just try to stay away from the person as much as you can, because one thing a narcissist hates is to be ignored. But you have to, for your own sanity, because they're going to do anything to manipulate you, to confuse you. The love bombing, that totally happened. If they can't gain your trust one way, they'll buy you gifts. They'll buy you really nice things, which happened a lot. They won't really listen. They won't take your needs, concerns, or things like that seriously. They're going to do what they want to do in the way that they're going to want to do it in order to attain your trust. So what I'm hoping to gain from the release of this episode, I'm really just hoping that other people can, like you said, that they're not alone. And I feel like, and I don't know what's going on, but more and more people are behaving like this. It's getting way too common. And it's very sad, but I'm just hoping to just hopefully help other people out, and the best advice I can give that I even have to follow myself is, if you know your truth, if you know your truth, and if you did everything you can to do the right thing, then, you did your best. But unfortunately, there's going to be people out there who are going to try to say otherwise. So I'm just hoping that other people can pursue the help that they need. I have to pursue the help that I need. I'm not going to get closure over this overnight. But, I'm finding joy in other ways. And I'm trying to learn not to be so afraid of everything. So I'm hoping other people can pursue the same fearlessness. I could go, and there were so many things that happened, just so many things that were just really messed up. But I mean, that's okay, like it's over now, and I'm just going to do the best that I can to keep doing the right thing. And yeah.
Kim's stepfather passed away in May of 2020 in the middle of the ever-rising COVID-19 pandemic. While his passing wasn't related to COVID, it did give us all some pause as to the fact that just like in life, he was able to quietly exit the scene before anyone could call him out publicly on his behaviors towards his family members. Even now, to this day, and after his passing, both girls are haunted by the memory of all of the trauma that he had caused, and are constantly in fear of calling him out publicly because of potential backlash. But one thing that is important for you all to know and take away from this is that in their own ways, both girls, especially Kim, have a lot of issues trusting people, relating to people, are continuously in a trauma loop and always wondering who is next to take advantage of them.
We are so fortunate and humbled that Kim chose us to finally help her get loud and help raise awareness. This is the first step for her to finally allow healing to take place. Her goal is to raise enough awareness about what happened to her so that others like her can not only realize that they are not alone, but see red flags and that would otherwise be missed due to shade being pulled over their face. What happened to her is a crime. That and her perpetrator was unfortunately able to barely escape, unscathed. To this day of his passing, he never truly took full responsibilities for his actions. And any apologies that he had, he took with him to the grave.
Kim, like all victims and survivors that we cover in these cases, is a bee. Bees are strong, resilient, yet vulnerable. They are not excluded from anybody else living, surviving, and thriving in life, but they do need to be protected at all costs. For bees will literally die protecting their own. Without bees, we as a human race cannot survive and thrive. So, be vigilant, for when you mess with the bees,
you get the hive.
Thank you for listening to A Nefarious Nightmare. Music used in the theme was originally by Ghost Stories Incorporated, remixed by Ryan RCX Murphy. Additional background music is provided by Epidemic Sound. A Nefarious Nightmare is scripted, researched, and produced by Courtney Fenner and Amanda Cronin. I'm Lainey Hobbs, and as always, be vigilant, for when you mess with the bees, you get the hive.